I recently just watched The Boy and the Heron for the second time. Well, at least I wrote this script right after I rewatched it, but that was like a month ago. But, anyways, upon rewatching it, I wanted to try to catch the more detailed aspects that might have flown over my head the first time, and to get an overall deeper understanding of the movie. I knew that on top of all of the surreal, mystical, almost incomprehensible storytelling, that there was much more to unpack visually and symbolically. So, spoiler warnings for the movie up ahead, obviously. But I would seriously recommend watching it first before anything if you haven't already. It really is an artistic experience like no other. This movie, as it obviously would, carries many of the thematic and visual similarities to Hayao Miyazaki's other works, like the child centric coming of age type story that has to do with family, wholesome and enviable platonic romantic relationships, the thrilling discovery of spiritual awakenings, and moral lessons that kids and adults alike can take away, all wrapped up in this beautifully animated bow. This movie in particular, while it does have all of those qualities, as many even say that it's a powerful culmination of all of Miyazaki's previous works, still uniquely has its darker implications between the characters and the supernatural worlds that they inhabit. The Boy and the Heron, unlike most of its predecessors, takes place in a very grounded and real historical setting that contextualizes the way that the characters are depicted. It's not some vaguely inspired countryside town, but it takes place during what has to be the most tumultuous and dangerous time to grow up in maybe all of modern history, amidst a world war. The first scene of the whole film, the opening scene, is this brutal and eye opening depiction of all of the death, uncertainty, and fear that comes along with living through a war, even more so being a child at that time. This sets the tone for the rest of the film to be, assumedly, more dark, graphic, and focused on real life childhood trauma, loss, and how it changes people, and the processes of grieving and moving on. And while all of those elements are included, this film takes one of the most drastic turns for the mood of the story, and it turns into this magical, surreal dreamland setting, one that isn't even physically tangible. In this sense, the story kind of resembled Spirited Away, in my opinion, and other previous similar movies, where a real setting transforms into a fantastical one, and the main character usually ends up traversing through both of them. But the reason behind Mahito's journey here just feels different and overall more grounded. But still, the first and second halves of The Boy and the Heron almost feel like two entirely different movies, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt that while watching. At first, I was only trying to pay close attention to the animation. As an animator myself, that was just something I liked to study. But something about the other aspects of the movie started to stick out to me. I was so mesmerized at how beautiful the landscapes were and how each seemingly mundane background, still shot, managed to feel so captivating, like they all had their own little stories to tell. The colors were beautiful, and I kept wondering what was it that was guiding the viewers to feel a certain way in each scene, and how was the movie being so effective at eliciting those things out of us? How can we look at a shot from basically any Ghibli movie and start to feel so nostalgic from it, or just intrinsically understand the spiritual weight that that story holds? I mean, what do I know? I'm a chronically online 19-year-old. I literally wrote the script for this video in my notes app. But once I started noticing certain patterns, I couldn't stop seeing them. I definitely thought it had something to do with the color aesthetics of the film, so I decided to try to take a deeper look. In the design world, color aesthetics describe the strategic use of certain colors in relation to each other. in order to elicit or convey a particular feeling or idea. Now, I know this word has been dragged through the mud in recent internet history, but it is still a legitimate thing, especially so when it comes to marketing and graphic design. Color theory, in particular, dives deeper into these ideas of how colors relate to one another and why we perceive them in the ways that we do. There are cultural or societal differences, sure, and these ideas of color also evolve over time, but there are just some aspects of color that seem to universally work. And this movie utilizes complementary colors the most to drive this point home. Every exact tone and hue of a color is picked and meant to be included for a reason, and the overall palettes serve a crucial purpose to further bring together the story. Colors that are complementary are the ones that are placed on the opposite ends of the color spectrum from each other. The most common or well known combinations are like orange blue, yellow purple, and red green, although technically there is an infinite combination of more specific colors. One of the first noticeable palettes I found was the use of blue as a color to represent the familiar. Mahito's outfit that he wears for a majority of the film is a washed out blue tone, and of course the heron is significantly blue as well. And depending on the lighting or a certain setting, Mahito's outfit could look a little more gray than blue. And although the heron's color design is significantly blue, his name is the Gray Heron. With both the gray and blue colors popping up like that in their designs, it can serve as a subtle visual connection that keeps the two of them tethered to one another in contrast to this unfamiliar world that they're about to set forth into. For example, Natsuko's kimono design is made up predominantly of yellow and orange tones that serve to complement Mahito's color palette. Perhaps this could indicate their inherent differences and disconnect and the struggle to really understand each other as they're on opposite ends of a spectrum. In fact, many of the colors of Mahito's immediate surroundings share this complementary theme too, like his bedsheet spread being this blue and orangish combination, as his bedroom might be the only place in the house where he feels safe enough to be vulnerable, but it is still ultimately not his home or his family. Another character I saw follow this pattern was Kiriko. Her outfit is a set of complementary colors, just like Mahito's, but only her older self. Her younger version's design only included the yellow patterning, and there could be multiple reasonings that I could find within this. It could continue the previous theme of the brighter, warm colors like yellow and orange to represent what's unfamiliar from Mahito's perspective, since he had no idea who she was initially. Or it could be that a simpler design was just more ideal for her in this alternate world, since she was the only one accompanying Mahito on his journey at the time, and maybe she didn't need to particularly stand out with a complementary color palette. However, older Kiriko, with the complementary purple and yellow outfit, does make her stand out, and it separates her and gives her design some importance, placing her over the visual noise of everything else going on in the house. Several of the other older ladies of the house could also be seen wearing this desaturated or low contrast purple or violet color, so maybe the addition of the purple later in Kiriko's life indicates her new place within this home and the new identity she's taken on. And speaking of characters that come from the Tower Masters world that have all of these bright colors going on, there's the parakeets. These man eating ginormous birds are the characters that probably give the strongest impression on the viewer in terms of color design. They come in this flurry of bright, almost pastel, prismatic colors with seemingly no system or pattern to follow behind, or at least that I could find. I'm still unsure of their thematic meaning and the relevance to begin with, much less an analysis of their visual forms. So there's not much I can say here. But it seems like this bright, chaotic mess of colors could also reflect the same chaos and the reactionary, violent behaviors that the parakeets themselves engage in. Then, there are instances in the film where subjects that are colored with white portray meanings of innocence, purity, or holiness, which is a concept that is not by any means new in the world of art and design. Artists have used this symbolic connection dating back hundreds, if not thousands, of years, and it's found much of its popularity within religious or spiritual messages in particular. And I can see this theme carry on in the movie, particularly for Natsuko. In the latter half of the movie, Natsuko's delivery room is full of white color, and her new outfit is comprised of a simple white cloth. The delivery room is a place that holds so much exclusivity and immense spiritual prowess within it that it punishes anyone who's not supposed to enter, almost as if it exists in some kind of higher realm. Another example of this particular use of white is the wada wada. These designs for the wada wada also show that these are creatures that are supposed to be seen as pure, entirely pure, with no kind of ill intent, and that they need to be protected and taken care of. I mean, look at them. These guys were on screen for 2 seconds, and my first thought was if anything happened to them, I would kill everyone in this movie theater and then myself. And that was exactly what happened. Not that I killed everyone, but that almost immediately after they were introduced, the Wada Wada were put in a situation of danger, and everyone's immediate reaction was to save them and to protect them. And even with Lady Himi's act of protecting them through the fire, Mahito was still angry at the fact that some of them died in the process. This is how pure and innocent these creatures are perceived to be. Their simplistic white design also reflects their childlike nature and genuine curiosity that they have for the world. White and black, which technically is not a complementary color combo, is still a duo that holds a lot of symbolic significance within the Tower Master's world, and this is something I'll go over later. I was also going to mention that red seemed like a color attached to motherhood in the movie, since it commonly showed up in scenes that involved either of Mahito's mother figures. One example was Natsuko's bedroom, which was fully embellished with these dark, blood red colors, from the walls to the furniture to the sheets. And then there was also young Himi's red dress. This connects the two of them not only as mother figures in Mahito's life, but also to each other as sisters. One thing that threw me off was the use of red in the Parakeet King's design. And I don't know if there was a specific symbolic meaning attached to his design visually, so this could be a stretch on my part. But I did realize that the three of those characters do at least have one other thing in common, which is playing some kind of role of authority in Mahito's life. Even though the Parakeet King himself didn't play a parental role like Natsuko and Himi, they all ended up making significant decisions that determined the direction that the plot moved in, which then made Mahito have to work around those decisions. And speaking of young Himi, there was one thing that I noticed. In virtually all of her scenes where she showed up in the movie, there were red and green complementary color palettes as well. They showed up in even the smallest way, like in the kitchen where they first talk, and she fed Mahito the toast and jam. And again, surrounding the hallways where Himi takes him back to the door leading to his world. At least from what I remember, this specific color combination wasn't as prominent with any other characters or scenes. But of course, Green is an especially prominent color in Ghibli films due to so many settings taking place outdoors in the wilderness, so that part is a given. But I took red and green to represent either young Himi as a character or the unique connection that only Mahito and Himi had. The Tower Master is one of the few major characters that has a design that is so minimal in terms of color composition and being comprised of predominantly dark colors. This is something that just doesn't show up in Ghibli films too often, as the bright and saturated colors in character design are just more fun and the more interesting option. That small hint of aqua blue in those jeweled stone things that the Tower Master wore actually make an interesting callback to Mahito, with their direct blood relation that's further solidified through their connection of blue. But the dark colors for him actually match the similarly dark colors of the Great Stone, which gives them both an air of mystery. It makes them both feel, metaphorically at least, farther away and more overwhelming and daunting, especially from a kid's perspective. There is this contrast between the dark colors of the Tower Master and the white blocks. Going back to that duo of black and white that I mentioned earlier, this could point to a kind of duality that exists within this world between old versus new, or freedom versus restriction, or being pure versus being tainted. All of these dichotomous concepts. I really like this yin yang idea of dichotomy with black and white because it almost acts as a law, like of physics or something, that is holding together the very fabric of their world, like how we have gravity. And the reason I like this dichotomy aspect so much is it really makes sense if I apply it to one particular scene. And this is at the end of the film during the destruction of the Tower Master's world. There we see as young Himi and Mahito are escaping the destruction. Himi looks back as the building blocks get eaten up by this completely dark black void, and we don't know where they end up going. They just disappear and forever cease to exist for all we know. And we can see that this is hard for Himi to watch, as it marks the end of everything that she once knew in this beautiful world. Since Himi and Mahito have such a strong bond and an understanding of each other, I wouldn't be surprised if this minuscule moment of Himi's grief mirrors the grief that Mahito is still processing in the real world, and how his fears of losing his mother forever and coming to terms with that are similar to this universe's inhabitants fearing losing everything that they have and accepting that harsh reality. Obviously, The Boy and the Heron is a film that is so magically non coherent and non linear that most people, myself included, didn't even understand the plot watching it for the first time. But upon deeper inspection, there is so much detail and intention within all of the chaos and ambiguity that really makes the whole film satisfyingly come together. And it's nothing short of a masterpiece, in my opinion, and it's rightfully deserving of being the first non English animated feature film to be nominated for an Oscar, and I hope it wins. I'll also probably be doing a third rewatch sometime soon, just to be able to find more hidden treasures underneath it all, because I'm sure I will. Thanks so much to anyone who got all the way through all of this rambling mess of a video, if anyone did at all. Obviously, looking at my channel, I don't do anything like video essays or even post regularly on YouTube, so I'm not expecting much traction from this, but it was pretty fun to make, and who knows, I might do more. So, see you around.